Hello, this is Malachi Bishop, and this is week 2 of Rehabilitation Counseling Research and Program Evaluation, RC-750. And in this section, I want to talk about narrative literature reviews. And because you have an assignment due in week 4, where you will be asked to complete and turn in a literature review paper, I also want to talk about the process of conducting and writing the literature review. Now, there is an assignment sheet for that paper, and that is available on Blackboard, and I want you to review that. But this discussion is related to that process as well, and the process of developing a literature review. So I think the text does an excellent job of talking about the importance and the contribution of narrative literature reviews, and how these papers have been an important part of the rehabilitation counseling research throughout our history. They are not just reviews of the literature, but they have been important means of moving the field forward, of presenting new ideas, new knowledge, new perspectives, but essentially by beginning with what we know, what the literature says, and then providing a new perspective, providing a new theory or model or approach or practice based on moving what we know a little bit forward. And so narrative literature reviews can include synthesis of existing information in a way that contributes to new knowledge. They can present or advance theories and models. They can examine important or controversial topics. They can present practice strategies or methods. They can be informational reports explaining or delineating new policies, laws, or developments. For example, we've seen in the past few years, and we will continue to see a lot of articles and chapters on the World Health Organization's ICF, the International Classification of Functioning, explaining how they work and describing how they can be used how the ICF can be used in rehabilitation counseling. So we've seen some good informational reports on the ICF. The DSM, when a new DSM comes out, a lot of times you will see chapters and articles explaining the changes in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. When a new law affecting rehabilitation counseling practice or persons with disabilities comes out, you might see narrative literature review talking about the new law or policy and what it means for our practice. So there are all sorts of informational reports that can be done. They can cover all of these areas, take all these different perspectives. They do require a comprehensive review and a thoughtful and systematic analysis in order to present a new perspective on a rehabilitation counseling topic. So let's talk about the process of developing a literature review. I'll talk this through in terms of a few steps. The first step is identifying the topic. The assignment for the week 4 paper will be to select one rehabilitation topic, issue, debate, concern, or question that is of particular interest to you and of importance to the profession. And as I've said, these assignments involve some work on your part, and so I think that you really should try to identify a topic or an issue that really is meaningful to you, and that will make the process more interesting and more enjoyable. So it can be a topic of personal or professional interest. It can be, if you really just can't think of anything, I suggest that you review the literature. You start opening up or going online and reading through some of our rehabilitation counseling literature and see if any ideas stand out to you. You can ask around. Talk to other students, other rehabilitation counseling professionals, talk to your clients, and get ideas that way. Another approach, you can review the disability advocacy group literature and websites. You can go on the web and look at if there's a disability that you have a particular interest in, say epilepsy, for example. You could go on the Epilepsy Foundation website and see what they're talking about there. See if there are new laws, new treatments, and maybe there's something there that will interest you and that you'll decide to do a review about. Step 2 then is to begin reviewing the literature. I suggest that you review the literature casting a wide net to include tangentially related topics and findings and literature from other professions. So what I mean there is look broadly. Look at professions beyond rehabilitation counseling. Whatever your topic is, you'll probably find relevant information that will make your review more complete and more interesting if you look at what people are saying in psychology, nursing, social work, physical and occupational therapy, for example. So do remember to keep in mind that other professions are doing research about disability, and to keep look in other professions and see what they have to say about your topic. Look back in time. So cast a wide net as you begin your research review, your literature review. Read the articles and critically review what they say. Look at the findings and look at the suggestions for further research. And you'll usually find those suggestions for further research that needs to be done on this topic in the discussion section of a research article. So really read these articles and chapters that you find when you start searching around, and begin to form your topic. And remember to get your topic approved by the instructor, as indicated on the assignment. Step 3 is to begin to organize your information. So once you have your topic identified, once you've looked at the literature and you've narrowed down your ideas and you know what you want to do, you've gotten your topic approved by your instructor, then you want to begin to organize the information. And I say organize it in a manner that works for you. But the key idea is you start to identify the key topics, the key arguments and the findings that you're finding as you're reading through the literature. You can organize these in a number of ways, in a way that makes sense to you. That's the important thing. So you can start making index cards. You can start organizing an Excel spreadsheet, or you can start doing this on a notepad or in a Word document, whatever works for you. But what I'm suggesting is that you start to put the information that you're reading together in under different in different sections, and in this way you'll begin to organize what will eventually be your paper. So you can organize information by research questions. If you have more than one research question, you can start organizing it by findings. So for example, research supporting a hypothesis, research rejecting a hypothesis, and research that is neutral. So let's say you're looking at some treatment. Does this treatment work for people with a specific disability? You can put some, if you find some articles saying that this treatment does work, so you would organize those in one category. Some articles saying that it doesn't work, and you could put those in another category, and some with mixed findings. So that's another way you could organize your information. If you're looking at a topic that has several components, a more broad topic, then you could organize your findings by different topics. Arguments for and arguments against an issue. If you're doing some professional issue, for example, and then chronologically, you could organize it. If you're doing a paper looking at an issue over time, then you could organize your information in terms of in the 70s, and this is what they're finding in the 80s, in the 90s, and so on. You may find as you begin reading and organizing your information that additional topics that you hadn't considered start to emerge, and so you'll need to reorganize your findings, and others or ways that you're organizing may need to be revised or eliminated. Okay, in terms of now you've got your information organized, and now we're starting to write the literature review. There are specific guidelines on the assignment sheet, but basically what you want to do in the introduction to your paper is define or identify the general topic or issue or area of concern. So this is what this paper is going to be about. And then provide a context for the review. Why is this important to rehabilitation counseling? Why is this important to the reader? Why is it important that we talk about this topic? Then I want you to establish the reason for reviewing the literature. Why is it important? Describe the criteria to be used in analyzing and comparing the literature. So how did you go about it? And then your introduction will have an advanced organizer, and that's explained in the assignment sheet. But basically what an advanced organizer is a statement for the reader about how the paper is laid out. So first I review the history of this topic, and then I will be talking about this, and then I will be talking about this, and then I conclude with that. So it's a statement right in the introduction saying this is how this paper is laid out, and it's just helpful to the reader to have that and understand at the beginning how the information is going to be presented. So as you'll see on the assignment sheet, that is a required element, and there are a few others. So take a look at that assignment sheet. Some general ideas related to the body of the paper. You want to present the information in a manner that makes sense to the reader using the order that you determine. So as you're putting the information together, as you're doing your review and organizing the information, think about, if I was coming into this not knowing anything about this topic, how would the presentation of the information make the most sense to me? What would come first? What do I need to know first? And then what would come next? And then I want you to think about that, and then in writing your paper I want you to present the information in a way that makes sense to the reader. Summarize individual studies or articles on the basis of importance. More important articles or studies or findings should get more attention in terms of space, more words and sentences, and then less significant or less important finding or supportive finding that came after the main study would get less length, less attention, and that's a way of signaling to the reader what's more important. Pay attention to APA citation style. Make sure that you are doing that correctly, because that will be part of your grade. And then think about transitions. That's important. As you're writing this paper, one section should lead to the next section. So think about transition sentences. based on this, we'll now move to this question. And so one section should lead to the other. And then in thinking about the conclusion, remember that in the conclusion you want to summarize the major points of your review, and you want to present your own conclusions. But this is not just a repeat of what you said in the introduction. The introduction should say why you did the research. The conclusion should reflect the new knowledge that has resulted now that you have done, because you have done this review and your analysis of what you've presented in a new way. Identify the limitations and methodological flaws, knowledge gaps that you found in the existing research. Or you can talk about inconsistency in theory or inconsistency in the findings. So basically I want you to do a critical review of the research that you reviewed, look at limitations and gaps, and then I also want you to identify areas for future study, and then state your conclusions and their relevance to rehabilitation counseling. So those are some general thoughts, general ideas on the process of writing your literature review paper. And as I've said a few times, the assignment sheet gives you a lot of detailed information about what we're looking for in those papers and how you will be graded. So make sure you pay attention. Contact the instructor if you have questions.